compilation that we put together.
Yeah.
And we have it.
Yeah, with the classical music, it just sounds great.
Here Comes the Sun by George Benson.
Yeah, that's
George Benson.
Benson. Okay.
Welcome to the solar stage, powered by solar energy, completely off the grid. We have a sustainability workshop. We'd like you to stick around. Chris Lures is going to talk about urban homesteading, urban gardening, and basically the definition of sustainability. Then Annie Warmke and I, myself are going to show you how to build a Strawbell house. And then Trish Dinbostel is going to come and talk about policy matters, which is an organization that she works with. Yes, and we have Brenda South, who's going to give a workshop afterwards and show you how to preserve and can the foods that you do grow in your garden. So we're talking about year-round gardening here, and follow these suggestions that Chris has to say, and with Brenda is that you'll actually learn how to eat like a king, because you get your best food from your gardens. So I guess a word of wisdom. A friend of mine told me once, when you go shopping in the grocery store, just walk the perimeter. That's where you get all your best foods. You step inside, that's where you get your processed foods. So, Chris, you want to go ahead and take over here?
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing? Hope you're having a good ComFest. Well, here's what I'm going to talk to you about today. We're going to talk about urban homesteading, which includes gardening, water collection, energy usage, and those kind of things. How many people think when you hear the word homestead, it means you have to be out in a rural area with lots of property? Does anybody think that? Because that's typically what homesteading means to folks. But in fact, you can do these things within your property inside the city limits. You don't have to have 5, 10, 15 acres to do this. I want to hear what do you think sustainability means? Holler out some definitions of sustainability. Anybody want to holler something out? Kind of, sort of, maybe? Okay. Sustainability basically means sustainable living refers to an individual or society's lifestyle that can be sustained with limited exhaustion of natural resources. That means we're living within our means and what nature can supply us. And that's the bottom line, because everything we do is judged by the energy it takes to produce that. And that's the problem. We're using more energy than the earth can provide us. At some point it runs out. That's a problem. This requires shifting from a fossil fuel-based, automobile-centered economy to a renewable, energy-based, diversified transport, reuse, recycle economy. Lots of words, lots of big words. Basically, it means we need to get back to being self-sufficient, sustainable, and not using more than we need to. Not more than we want to, but more than we need to. We need to live within nature, not outside of it. Much of our society thinks it's separate from nature. In fact, we are not. We are within it whether we like it or not. Homesteading is a self-sufficient lifestyle, whether it's rural or city, urban, suburban, it doesn't matter. It's a self-sufficient lifestyle. We judge that lifestyle by the energy we use, and that's a carbon footprint. How many of you have heard the word carbon footprint? That's the amount of energy it takes to support us in our lifestyle. And that's the fundamental way in which we judge how this works. It represents the amount of carbon required to maintain that person's lifestyle and what impact that lifestyle has on the earth. Again, just how much we use to do what we do. Here's some statistics for you. The average carbon footprint of a U.S. resident is 20 metric tons. The average worldwide carbon footprint is 4 metric tons. That means on average in the U.S. we use 5 times as much energy to sustain ourselves as those outside of the United States. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems like more than our fair share. It really does to me. So how are you going to, what areas are you going to change to use less energy? Well, there's 4 basic things we do. We have transportation, we have housing, we have energy usage, and we have diet. Now, transportation, it's a little easier to choose different sources when you're in the city. You got walking, you got bus, you got biking. So those kind of things work better. The idea is to choose to use your car less. How many people use walking or biking when they're trying to get around? Great, see? Do all of you folks live predominantly in the city, I'm going to assume? Yeah. See, it's not a bad thing to do. In the city, you can do that. Bicycling, I'm a big fan of bicycling. I've been cycling, commuting for 20 plus years now, and I love it. It's just a great way to get around. Housing. Here's a big thing for us in the United States. I've even had a couple conversations today with some folks about the McMansions, as they've been nicknamed here lately. When you have two people living in 5, 7,000, 10,000 square foot houses, it's like, how much space does one or two people really need to have to keep themselves safe? And then along with that is when you have 10,000 square feet of a house, you have to heat it, you have to cool it, you have to maintain it, and there's a huge amount of energy that goes into those things that most people don't realize. You have to clean it. Think of how much time they spend cleaning those homes. So you need to think about the size of your house, and then Annie and Annie Warmke and Tim Chavez will be up here after a bit, and they're going to talk about Strawbell building, which is a really great way to build dwellings using natural materials that are really highly efficient, much more efficient than anything we've created. Energy. I have a saying that says if we don't use it, we don't have to create it, we don't have to buy it. So by not using so much energy, fundamentally we are more efficient as a culture. Diet. Talk about diet a bit. We'll get into that here in a few minutes, but growing your own food. Food miles is very important. How many people know what food miles are? You heard that term before? Basically, food miles is the amount of miles that food travels, a particular item travels, before it gets to your table. On average in the United States, food travels 2,300 miles before it gets to your table. That's a lot of miles. That's a lot of petroleum used not only to raise it, but to get it to your table. And as that goes up, food gets more expensive. And that's not a good thing, because then the quality starts to suffer, so they can keep prices down. So think about that. Where does your food come from? Ultimately, it should come from your yard. That's not always possible. But the next best thing is a farmer's markets or a neighbor or somebody like that. Next page. So green, and I really don't like the word green anymore. It's been kind of hybridized to mean all these different things. I prefer the word sustainable, because sustainable really means what it should, and that means not using more than you should so that the earth can sustain us. There's 4 aspects to sustainable living. We got reduce, reuse, recycle, rebuy. And it is in that order. There's a specific order for these, meaning reduce is first. Again, if you reduce it, you don't need it, you don't have to buy it, you don't have to create it, you don't have to find it, any of those things. Reuse. This has become a big thing in our culture lately, and I'm glad to see that. Reusing things. Thrift stores, Goodwill stores, they're a great place for reused items. Save you a lot of money, and they work just as well. Recycle. Recycling is a great thing, but it's not always very efficient. Because most things, when you tear them down and create something else with them, you're adding energy into that, and there's loss. That means it's not 100% cycle. Meaning if you recycle plastic, by the time it's made into something else, there's some loss there. So anytime you lose something, you're losing something out of the loop there. And rebuy, and that means basically like Goodwill and thrift stores again. You're not buying something new, you're buying something used, so you keep it out there and its lifetime is much longer. Something I'm going to say here is there's no such place as a way. Anybody know what I mean by that? When you throw it away, where is a way? There is no such place as a way. Somebody has to deal with it. And if you go to the south end of Columbus, you'll see where most of the trash in Columbus goes. There's a big mound down there. There's a big trash plant down there, and that's not away. That's right here in our community. Trash doesn't go away. It's around. It never goes away. So think about that. When you go to put something in the trash can and you think you're throwing it away, there's no such place as away. How many people recycle? Recycle bins. How many people, if you've had this experience, remember the first time your recycle bin was fuller than your trash bin when you went to take the trash out? Remember, I see some shaking heads out there. It's a pretty cool feeling. It seems kind of minor, it seems kind of trivial, but it is a pretty good feeling because that's the first time you realize that what you're using and throwing away is not going to the trash dump. It's going somewhere else to be recycled. So that's always a good feeling. So remember, no such place as away. Doesn't exist. Let's talk a bit about water, and water is a particular passion of mine. I'm from Little Square Farm, as Tim mentioned, and we do rainwater harvesting systems. That's our business. Here's some facts I'll toss out to you about water. One, the same amount of water exists today as it did 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. It's not changed. What has changed is the amount of that water that is usable for us as humans. It's decreased. It's decreased for a couple reasons. One, we've contaminated a lot of it with runoff from farms and pesticides and industrial waste and things like that. The other thing is we've paved and cemented over so many surfaces in our cities that the water can't even get back to the ground table. It ends up, here's what the traditional city path of water is when it rains. And everybody, it rained really hard on Thursday night. There was a lot of water around. So here's the way the water travels. It comes down on the roof of the building, goes into the gutters, goes down the downspouts, goes into the storm drain, heads towards the processing plant where it's mixed with all the other water and waste from our homes. That means all the human waste and everything else. So it goes down to the processing plant. It all has to get treated, and we treat all our water for drinking, despite the fact that less than 1% of the water we use is actually for drinking. We still treat it all the same way. So it goes down to the processing plant, all gets treated and filtered and chemicals added and so on and so forth, and then it's brought back to your home so that you can use it. And again, less than 1% of that water is drinkable. And for people that are growing gardens or things outside, they now take a hose. That water has made this big loop, and they now put a hose on it, turn on a faucet, and they water the garden outside. And the water was already there. We just let it go somewhere else. It really is the long way around. Water will be, and in some areas of the world, our next crisis, and it will be a big deal. And the reason it'll be a big deal is because we will figure out how to live without petroleum. We cannot do without water. As living things, we must have water. So we have to be really careful about what's going on here. So the big thing here with water is harvesting rainwater. Again, you got this big loop. So if you catch it when it starts to go down your downspout and put it in some kind of storage container, whether it's rain barrels, cisterns, who knows what, whatever you could find, now you've shortened that cycle. You haven't added any energy to that cycle, and the water is actually healthier for the plants that you're going to use it on outside because it doesn't have all the chemicals inside it. So it's much better that way. And in fact, we call it free water, and in fact it is free water. Once you've purchased or found the things that you need to collect the water in, there's no more cost in that. Water prices are going up. I don't know how many of you might be from Delaware or some of the other surrounding counties, but we did a Master Gardener show in March in Delaware, and most of the folks had just gotten their utility bills right before that show. Not only was there an increase, but now they're paying a surcharge for the new water treatment plant they built up there, and it was the talk of the show because everybody was looking at this water bill going, oh my gosh, I'm paying that much for water? So water costs are going up. We're putting a lot of energy into it that we don't need to, and it's not making a lot of sense, especially when, in my opinion, the water that's coming back isn't as healthy as the water that went there for the most part. Other ways to use water, think about gray water systems. They're kind of new here in the state. There's not many people doing them. Some of the folks don't particularly like them because they don't understand them. But gray water systems are a really nice way of not putting more energy into that water. Let me ask this. How many people understand the difference between gray water and black water? Does anybody understand that? Gray water is stuff from your washing machine, from your bathtub, from your kitchen sink. Black water has human waste in it. So the idea with gray water is to take those things that have little to no harmful contaminants in them, especially if you're using organic things to wash and do your washing with. You can send that right out to water a tree, to water a garden, to do things like that. You don't have to send it in this big loop. So that's something else to think about. And actually, we as a business will be getting into gray water systems probably next year sometime because people are asking more and more questions about it. So that's another thing. Black water is a whole other issue, and while there's ways to recycle that, they're fairly complicated, and the building codes don't allow it. So that's something a little way off. But I think at some point we'll get to that point too. And fundamental way to take care of our water is to reduce how much we use. You know, we get beat up by this all the time on the news. Is when you're brushing your teeth, turn the water off. You know. Don't use, if you've got a clothes washer, don't put it on the extra large setting when you only got a large setting or a small setting, things like that. There's some simple things we could do, having high efficiency fixtures in your home. And sometimes you don't even have to replace the fixture. Sometimes you can add a nozzle or something on the end of it that then restricts how much water comes out of it. So we need to fundamentally reduce how much water we use. So that's the thing, and I'll be doing a rainwater harvesting workshop after this series on the stage. We'll do a side one here if anybody's interested. Just find me in the yellow shirt. Let's move on to plants and gardening. How many of you compost? Composting? Outdoor composting or worm composting or both? Most are outdoor compostings. It's a great way to do it. Think about this, the whole composting concept. What it means is we eat our food, and then we take that waste and we send it outside or a worm bin, whichever, it's the same process. And then the critters, nature itself, takes care of recycling that waste, that food waste, into something that we can then take and feed back to our plants that makes the plants healthier, that then feed us. So there's this nice cycle of life going with composting. It's really a pretty interesting thing. And in fact, nature does composting all the time. If you walk out into the woods and there's this layer of leaves and sticks and all this stuff, that's nature's recycling, or composting, excuse me. That's nature's composting. And that's all we're doing is simulating that same environment in a city. Worm composting is becoming more popular. You know, you have a bin there, you have some worms in it. It's the same process, except worms accelerate that. It makes it a little faster. And no, they don't smell, and no, they don't get out, so you don't have all these worms going around the kitchen. None of that happens. It can be done very well, and it's very, very hidden. It's not obvious when you walk into the kitchen. So we talked about food miles and food quality. How many of you have been paying attention to how many food scares we've had in, let's just say, the last 2 years? At what point did anybody think peanut butter was going to be dangerous to eat because you might get sick from peanut butter? This is what just blows my mind. Some of the food staples that we've had for years and years, suddenly you have to worry about whether you're going to eat them or not. Food quality is a real issue. When you grow your own, or you go to a farmer's market, or you go to the farm where it's grown, none of those issues exist because you know where it's come from, you know how it's been handled, you know how it's been raised. So when you know those things, one, you get very connected to how our food is produced, but two, you know the quality that's behind it and the care that's behind it. When you buy it off the grocery store shelves, you don't know any of that. All you know is what the label says, and frankly, I don't think the label's being all that honest about it anyhow, so something to think about. How many of you could grow your own food, even if it's just something small? A good bit. If you can grow grass, you can grow food. And in fact, grass, I don't like grass much. Grass is a water hog. Most of the grass we grow in this state is not even native plant to here. That's why it needs so much water. But if you can grow grass, you can grow food. You need to rethink. Everybody thinks, oh, I want a garden, so I have to go out and I have to dig the soil up and I have to put it off to the side and I have to protect it and do all those things. Reality is you don't have to do those things. You can grow them in flower beds, you can grow them in containers, hanging plants, all of those things. There's lots of options for growing your own food. You need to think outside of the box, or think, you know, if I'm growing something there, I could probably grow food there. Containers are really cool, especially if you live in an apartment. Maybe you don't even have a lawn, but you probably have some outdoor patio space. You could use containers to grow tomatoes, or maybe a pepper, or some herbs, things like that. So think about what space do you have and how do you utilize it. There's a place I'm a big fan of. It's called Path to Freedom. It's Julian DeVeris in Pasadena, California. This guy has taken, with him and his 3 adult children, he has taken 1/5 of an acre, and they grow about 6,000 pounds of food on this 1/5 of an acre inside the city. No different than anything around here. They have a longer growing season, that helps. But it's really cool. If you get a chance, pathtofreedom.org. It's a wonderful place. It's been an inspiration for us for quite a few years now, because these guys, they work hard and they do everything they can do, but you look at this and go, well, he's doing it. I can do some of what he's doing. It's not that hard. Container gardening, we talked about that. Square foot gardening, has anybody heard of that? Matter of fact, the guy that wrote the book was at the garden show earlier this year. Basically, square foot gardening is you build this container, you put dirt in it, it's raised up off the ground, and you take it and divide it into squares, into square foot. And each square has a different plant in it. And it's a great way, it's not hard, it's not labor intensive, and it's a great way to have a variety of vegetables in a very small space. Something to think about. And the book's out there, you can get them used, you can get them brand new, you go to the library, so on and so forth. Edible landscape, and that's what I mean when I say think about where you're growing things and think about what food you can grow there. There's so many things that we don't grow that we could grow that look pretty, so your neighbors aren't complaining, but you can eat them too. We are gradually at our home, each year I take a little bit of grass away. The neighbors don't seem to mind yet. It takes me about 15 minutes with a real mower, and that means REEL mower, non-powered mower, to cut our grass. 5 years ago it took me a half an hour, so that tells you how much less grass we have. So think about that. If I've got grass, you can grow food, maybe a little less grass wouldn't hurt anybody. So, something else, we had this discussion, this casual discussion the other day. We talked about strawberries, and we had a small strawberry bed beside our patio, and we got the strawberries off of it, and you bite into this, and there's this explosion of taste, and your body reacts differently. And this thing popped in my head. It was like a genetic memory. My belief is our bodies have the tools to heal ourselves. We're just not giving it the right tools. And when you bite into something that was growing naturally, like it should be, not only does it taste better, but it gives more tools to your body to be healthy. And if anybody of you, whether it's eggs or strawberries or anything else, if you taste one bought at the store, and then you turn around and buy or taste one that was growing naturally, whether it's in your garden or somebody else's, there is a massive amount of taste difference. It's incredible. And suddenly your body goes, oh, I remember what this tastes like. That's what it should be. Head lettuce. How many have heard about head lettuce now? There's no nutritional value from head lettuce. It's like 98% water. They've modified it so many times so that it stays fresh for 2,300 miles, so that when it gets to you, it looks good, but there's no nutritional value in it because they've engineered all of that out. They cared more about it, what it looked like, than more about how good a quality it was. So I can't encourage you enough to try to grow your own. And it's not hard. You don't have to put tons of hours in. None of that. You can do it any way, shape, or form you can. I'll go back to the dwelling thing for just a moment here. Give you some statistics. In 1978, the average square foot of homes in the United States was 1,650 square feet. The lot size was 9,700 square feet. In 2003, the average home square foot is 2,125. The lot square footage was 8,666. And basically that indicates a trend that we're using less space for outdoors and more space for our dwellings. And again, as I talked about earlier, when you have a bigger home, there's all kinds of energy that needs to be put into that, whether it's heating, cooling, maintaining it, cleaning that, all of that. And it's far more energy than most of us think about. Let me go over some residential energy usage here for you. 24% for lighting and appliances, 47% for space heating. And again, we go back to that larger homes cost more. Water heating is 17%, refrigeration is 5%, and air conditioning is 6%. So those aren't so bad, but the more space you have, the more it costs. You can see there's a lot of solar things out here. There's solar ovens, there's the solar village out there, and if you walk over to those, you realize how hot they are. We gave up air conditioning about 4 years ago and haven't regretted it ever since. It's cost us less money and we're healthier because air conditioning, especially when we're talking about hot, humid days like this, also dries out the air. So when you're going in and out of air conditioning, your body doesn't like that too well. So think about that. So again, smaller homes, more efficient homes, talking about straw bales, cost less to operate, cost less to build. And we'll have, again, I'll repeat this, we'll have Annie and Tim up here to talk about straw bales after a while, and we'll have Local Matters up here at the end of this session on the stage to talk about more about growing your own food locally. They do a great job of supporting that in the city. So we're going to sum it up a little bit, and then if you have questions, we'll do that too. We're talking about carbon footprint, how much energy we use to support our lifestyle. And that's where sustainability comes from. We're using more than what the earth can supply us, then we're not sustainable. We need to learn to do more for ourselves. That means growing your own food, taking your transportation choices upon yourself, harvesting your rainwater, living in smaller homes, so on and so forth. So we need to be more conscious. This takes a paradigm shift. And here's another thing I'll put forth too. If you watch the news media, they tend to want to convince you that there's going to be another new technology. It's going to save us. Well, frankly, folks, we've only had this problem for about 100 years. The human race existed for thousands of years before that and survived just fine without some of these things. So I don't believe we need another new technology. I think the technology is here and now. We just need to think differently about what we're doing. Make different choices. Be more conscious of it. So that's about it. I want to give a plug to the High Green Living Fair that comes up on September 7th. It's in Zanes Landing Park in downtown Zanesville. It's another great place to learn more about these subjects. There'll be lots of workshops, lots of vendors and booths, so on and so forth. So that's about all I got. Questions, comments, anything, different perspectives? Or is everybody just trying to get out of the heat? Anything? Well, great. I thank you very much. I appreciate you listening to me.
Where's your booth?
Oh, our booth is on the other side of the shelter, which is this brick building that we see right behind us here, and it's straight down the path that goes east of the shelter. Can't miss us. We're actually right by one of the ComFest volunteer tents, so I'll be there, my wife will be there, and if any of you want to come and talk about this one-on-one, I'm happy to do so. It's a passion of mine, so thank you much.
Let's hear it for Chris, sustainability. Good job, Chris. Coming up next is Andy Warmke, Blue Rock Station.
going to be getting ready. Right now we need to bring the straw bales in, but if you're here for the workshop and you're even if you're just hanging out, you're probably going to want to come in a little bit closer because we've got some really great photos from Blue Rock Station, in my humble opinion. Is it okay to do this, Larry? Okay. Anyway, so I'm Annie Warmke from Blue Rock Station, and this is Tim Chavez, who is the guy who puts this stage together every year and does a really terrific job. Timmy Chavez. And Bill, his fearless assistant, who gets to do all the work and does it with a smile. Okay. So while they're getting set up, I'm just going to talk a little bit. It's hard to talk when there's just two people, so if you don't want to be in the middle of the workshop, you probably don't want to sit up front. Matthews, are you going to be my fearless assistant? Maybe. Okay, anyway, so as I was saying, I'm Annie Warmke, and I'm one of the people, along with Jay Warmke, who's my husband, who has founded and runs Blue Rock Station, which is a sustainable living center. We usually don't have to compete to talk with band music, so if you can't hear me, just let me know. I don't have any trouble talking louder. Anyway, so we're going to look at some photos. Chris is helping me out here. It's under Strawbell. It's right here. Right there. Oh, you can see it on the screen. Okay. Yeah, so if you just put view as slideshow, we'll be in good shape. Just, yeah. Wait. The slide, oh, is film strip the same as slideshow? Okay. If you push this one, view as slideshow, it'll give us the whole screen. Yeah, right there. There we go. All right. So one of the things the Blue Rock Station is famous for, and I don't use that word lightly because we don't do things the way other people do, is we started building and have built a house out of tires and cans and bottles. And there really is an architect that designs buildings like that out of Taos, New Mexico. And so you'll see in the photos that lots of the buildings have rammed earth tire foundations. And then we incorporate straw bale. Now, the reason that we started doing this is something that Chris was talking about, and that is rethinking. We don't really have any choice about rethinking. We've got to rethink. There's just no choice in it. So we can choose to have fun and rethink, or we can say, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Let's just kill ourselves today. We'll be like the Jones clan and just swallow some Kool-Aid and it'll all be over with. Well, I want to do the opposite. I think this is a really exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time to be thinking about the challenges that we're facing, not just in this country, but all over the world. And fortunately, we have a new president who is, I hope, going to do a little bit better than the last one. He wouldn't have to do much to do better than the last one. So, but I've got higher hopes than just a little tiny bit. And anyway, so what you're looking at here are just some photos of how we build different buildings. Now we've got our house, which is an earthship, and that is made of tires and cans and bottles. And then there's an add-on section that has straw bales. We've incorporated shredded tires that we use in our French drains around the buildings. We have a plastic bottle greenhouse that's made with rammed earth tire foundation, and then plastic bottles that make up the walls. And there's Timmy, and he is helping to frame up an extension we built onto the garage a couple years ago. And the thing that you're seeing in here is a lot of different people, because one of the things that we try to do is to open up what our business and even our home to people from all over the world, really, that come there to learn the different techniques of how to do things like solar cooking, how to build a solar cooker, how to build these kind of buildings. This is our chicken house right here, because we say nothing but the best for our chickens, so we call it the chicken chalet, because of course it should have a cool word because we're having fun with it. And this is Chica. We have rescued cats, and she's our official inspector, so she gets on top of everything and checks it out to make sure nobody's going to get injured or anything. And you'll see we're using straw bales, you'll see we're using tires. Basically what we're doing is using what's available, and that's a really important piece of information when you're trying to construct something, because one of the things that we see happening right now is what we call green, like LEEDs architecture. So we've got all these architects now that want to be LEED certified. They want to be gold. And what we found is that's just about products. So we're not talking about products. We're not talking about going out and buying anything. We're talking about using what we have. So we try to use what's available. We use saplings to tie the bales together. Usually the straw bales come out of the field when they're baled, and we only use straw. We don't use hay because hay has a lot of seeds and bits in it that maybe rodents would like to eat. And you see the sapling going across here that just came out of the woods. That's a sapling that would have had to been cut down anyway because it's in a woodland area and there's big trees around it. And we use all kinds of things in the house. Our cupboards came from the high school before it was torn down. Our ceiling came out of the old shoe repair shop in Zanesville. So the idea is, if you create for yourself an annual shopping list and thinking about what are my projects for this year and what am I going to need, then you'll know throughout the year, especially if you're just a little bit ago, Brenda South, who's going to be talking about canning in a little bit, she drinks wine and I don't, but I want all of her bottles because I use wine bottles for, I use them for garden, outlining the garden to make a raised bed, but I'm trying to create a sunburst in a window and I need yellow bottles. And we were walking back and she said, "Oh, look at all those yellow bottles." And we went running over and we brought 2 cases back to her truck and we're gonna go get some more because we know this is our project. This is on the annual shopping list. So what we're gonna do today, Timmy's gonna come up and help me, and we're gonna talk a little bit about what it means to do Strawbell construction. And I just wanna ask before we go into this very deeply, is there anybody here specifically that is thinking of or really interested in building with Strawbell? Okay. All right, you talked me into it. Well, if you are, do you think you could come closer? Yeah. So, because this should be like an intimate conversation. Although I love to talk and I'm quite keen to talk. Come on up, you can do it. If you want to do this, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about why should we build with these materials, and then we're going to actually show how you put the wall together, and then we're going to make some what we call rhino poo, and we're going to show how to use that as one of the earth plastering parts, and then we're going to show you how to coat the bales. If you want to know more than that, you have to come to a workshop to Blue Rock Station. So the first thing that we would do is we'd say, all right, what do we want our building to look like? And we know from nature that everything is about location, location, location. They say that about real estate too, don't they? But animals know that already. So the location needs to be conducive to collecting the sun when you want it and keeping the sun out when you don't want it. So for instance, if I was making a building, I would want to say, what's the latitude and longitude of where that building's going to sit? And then secondly, I would say, all right, I want it to be oriented to the south, and where we are right now on the earth, meaning this spot, we might want it to go southeast just a hair. And that's going to enable us in the wintertime to collect all that sunlight when the sun's really low in the horizon. If we have windows facing the direction of southeast, we're going to get all the light we want in the winter, but in the summer, when the sun is really high in the sky, like it is right now from the being in June, we won't get very much sun in the house at all. And that's a great thing because we don't want to have to cool the house from all the sun. So the second thing we would do is to think about the water issue. We have lots of water in Ohio normally, so we like to use tires, rammed earth tires, and you're seeing a lot of that in the photos. And the idea of using rammed earth tires is there's one tire for every human being in America. There's lots more in the rest of the world. So 300 billion tires, right? No, 300 million, billion, it feels like a billion when you're looking at them. 300 million tires every year we generate. So if you took tires back and got new ones this year, then there's those tires, and where do they go? Well, we can't possibly use all those up in our buildings, but we've used up roughly about 2,500 tires through the foundations. And the reason we want to have a rammed earth tire foundation is because that gets those straw bales up above where the moisture should be. So if it's going to rain and snow and do all that stuff, that's no good for straw bales. That's going to create a sick building. But the tires don't care how much it rains because they're tires. And when you put the earth inside of them, they create a mass that enables you to collect energy, and then that energy can be released into the building. So if we were doing this the proper way, we'd have a row of tires down here, and I've got a little tire. I don't know where it went. Yeah. This is my demonstration tire. Whoops. And this is pretty cool because I wish they were all this small. It'd be so much easier. But the idea is that you're going to fill that tire full of clay, and you see that in the picture. And then that becomes the brick, one brick, that holds up the building, because it's going to bear the weight of the load of the building. Now you can build straw bale structure load bearing, but it doesn't really make sense to me because there are a lot of other things that can go wrong along the way. So if you create a skeleton and then you use the straw bales as a way to insulate, that's a real efficient way to create a building. Do you have stuff?
You know, what we do is we line up tires. I wish we could freeze some of this because it actually demonstrates it really well. But what we do is we start off with one tire here, one tire next to it, another tire next to it, and we fill it with clay. And then we get a sledgehammer. Okay? And we've been trying to think of an easy way to do this, but we get a sledgehammer. We just start pounding the clay into the side of the tire. The tire starts getting inflated like you're inflated with air, but it's got solid rammed clay inside of it. And what's amazing about it is by the time you're finished and you got your tire set, where it's completely, I guess, inflated or infilled, is that it weighs somewhere in the area of about 300 pounds.
Wow.
Okay? So what we do is, that's what we do with our foundation. Then on top of the foundation, on top of the tire, the rammed earth tires that are the foundation for the base of the, it's basically a stem wall. It's a pounded tire stem wall. With that wall that you're making with the tires, then we put like a 8-inch by 2-inch plank over it, and I forgot the word for that. What's that? A sill. Yeah, we put a sill plate on it, and then from there we drill it, and then we get rebar and we ram it into the tires. Now the tire foundation we actually make 2 levels high. All right. So basically, what you have is about 24 inches of tire, rammed earth tire. Put a sill plate over it, and then we drill it, and then ram rebar through it, and leave the rebar somewhere in the area about 8 to 10 inches on the top, sticking out, and that's where we impale the bales on top of it. Let's see. Our next step would be from that point that we build up the straw bale wall to the level that you'd want it, and that'd be more like about 8 feet, right? So, right, you can make it as high as you want. And you know what Annie was saying about, there's 2 types of making straw bale building. It's post and beam infill, which is basically what you have is you have a minimal amount of wood in order to support the roof as a frame to put your bales inside. And then there's the other, which is called, she just mentioned it, it's called load bearing. And the people in Nebraska basically have been making load bearing straw bale buildings for over 100 years. They have buildings there that in existence, and actually buildings, I'm talking about schools that are made out of straw bale that are still in existence today. And so there is a way to do load bearing. It's just a little bit trickier because you're actually putting a roof on top of bales, actually. Okay, and there's a way to tie them in together. But what we find easy is the post and beam is what you get a minimal amount of wood. And what Annie's talking about is reusing is that, you know, when you set your goals is, that you want to build a house, and you set your goal also is I don't want to spend any money. I mean, you can actually say that I don't want to spend any money, I want to build a house. A lot of people would laugh at you at that. But if you look around, you see 2x4s everywhere. I mean, so much stuff is discarded right now, and I think we're lucky to be able to do that now. But you know, eventually that's going to pass. Start collecting your materials. Like if you have a piece of property, you decide to make a little shed in your backyard, just start collecting wood, collecting wood, collecting wood. And you can actually build a home for free. So with the pounded tire foundation, post and beam wood. If you wanted to go to an extreme, you can use aluminum cans, open them up, make them flat. You could actually make shingles out of that. But there's a lot of other ways where you can find slate that's being thrown away that you can use for a roof. There's many different types of materials you can use to make a roof. And one of them, an option is having a living roof. We've made a lot of a few buildings that actually have a living roof on top, and we have pictures in here also. So really, you can make a building, you can make a residence, you can make a work shed, you can make a garage. You can do it for nothing. All you have to do is just plan exactly what you want to do, with the intention is, I don't want to spend any money. Some people say, I can't afford to spend any money, and you can find all the material around if you put your eyes out for it. So,
one thing, if you're thinking about building a garden shed, if you need to look at the zoning because it's different everywhere, but most cities allow a footprint, which is the exact pattern, the shape of the building, how much land that building takes up, can be as much as 10 by 10, because that's the size Lowe's and Home Depot sell those sheds, and you don't have to have a building permit for one of those sheds. The main thing they're looking at is, do you have water going into it or any kind of sewage? So there are ways that you can create these kind of buildings and still comply with the zoning. And the more we do this, the more the government is going to find this to be an acceptable way of creating buildings. And it's a great, reusing materials is good, but here's the thing. Some people say, well, I don't have the skill. Well, one of the things you can do is go to workshops. A lot of the community schools have workshops, not on Strawbell, but on basic construction, on basic carpentry and things like that. So in the winter, when you're sitting at home and you're going, boy, it's so bloody boring, you can go take a little class and learn how to do some of these basic things. Because one of the things that, when I started out, I said, you will be green, meaning we don't really have any choice. Well, we need skills, and our grandparents and their parents had skills, so it's not that many generations ago that we all had to learn how to have these skills, especially men. If you were a man, it was born into you, right? You're supposed to know how to fix a car, and you're supposed to know how to build something. Is that right? But what happens if it's not in your DNA and you didn't learn it? Us women, we're supposed to be able to cook, bring home the bacon, cook some more. I mean, we're supposed to know how to do these things. It's supposed to be born in us, but it isn't. We learn these things. So we need to be good to ourselves and learn skills, and also work in community. And you see that a lot in these pictures, that we're working with other people to create buildings, to do the things that we do. And it makes it a lot of fun. The building takes on a whole different meaning because people do artwork on the buildings with the plasters and so forth. Anyway, so Tim was talking a little bit about steps. So what I wanted to do is show you when we want to put a building together, and let's say it is sitting on the right foundation, which it isn't today, but we're going to pretend it is. The second thing after the bales are stacked up, and you see that a lot in the pictures, we have to tie the building together. So we have a needle. This needle is produced for us locally, and we do sell these on our website. And so we have to have a needle, and then we just save the baling twine from the bales of hay that we have for goats and llamas, and we reuse it. And what we're going to do is, we have bamboo today because that's available. Remember, we're going to use what's available, but we might just have saplings from the woods. They're pretty easily available. And then we're just going to sew the bale together. So do I have a volunteer that would like to come and be a seamstress? Matthews. This is when the trusting assistant comes in. Come on, you can do it. This is Matthews. He's an intern at Blue Rock Station, and we do have an intern program, and have interns that come from all over the world that work with us.
what Annie's going to demonstrate is tying the bales together so that you actually get a solid wall when you put it through. And some bales you have to actually split in half. What she's doing is she threaded the needle, and she's pushing it through the bale, where she's going to actually split the bale in half. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. The next thing we have to do is we got to make the wall begin to look like a proper wall. So let's just pretend, that we have the wall sewn together. I'll never be allowed to teach this workshop again. I couldn't sew the wall together. All right. Anyway, so then what we have to do is have lots of clay. And we'll play in the clay by making it into mud. Okay, if you want to do, you think we can do that? Tim said we should show you how we impale the bales. Now, what we do when we're going to sew the bales, yeah, and so it's just like laying out bricks. So we have a bale here and a bale here, and then we straddle the next bale on top. Then, well, you want to have one on either side. So you want one there and you want one here. So that bale is attached to the one underneath of it. So all we do is take saplings, or in this case bamboo, and we shove it down through there. Now, in theory, we would have more bales. We'd have more bales. That one may not go, it's awfully thick. But Tim is strong. So that's how we put the bales together that way. Then we sew them with the saplings in the front. Try not to hurt the person that's holding the stick. It's probably not going to go, but that's okay. You get the idea of it. You want to have a small enough sapling that it'll go through. And you don't put the saplings in until you're at the top, the very top of the wall. It's a comedy of errors. All right. So the next thing we do is we want to begin what we call earth plastering or mud plastering. And we need to know how we're doing for time. We're okay? Because I put the watch over there. All right. So you get the idea of how it goes together. It really does work, believe it or not. See, I'm really the comedy routine. So, all right. So we at least got it to stick together. That's a good thing. Now, the one thing we are showing you, which we can tell you over and over, and you might not believe us, is that this way of constructing is a lot more forgiving than the cement block, stick kind of thing where it has to be so darn precise. Because here's the thing, if we don't get this really flat, we're going to have all that mud plaster that's going to help us to make the wall to look more flat. So this is just a real good example. Now, don't shove them in there yet. We're not ready. We got to have some rhino poo. So we're going to mix up. The first two things we do for the building. Yeah, we normally would not use sifted clay. Don't spread it out very much. We normally wouldn't have sifted clay, and we need to have some straw. So we're gonna have to cut a bale. I've got some needle nose pliers. Good luck. Okay, those bales are really tight. So we're gonna add some water. We need a little bit of water. We don't need that much straw. Okay, let's have a little bit of water. And what we're basically doing is we're making up some mud. So I don't think it's a good idea if I hold the microphone and put my hand in there. But what we want to do, you normally would just use your hands when you're mixing this little bit. We have a concrete mixer that we do this with. Don't get it too wet. The straw is very long, which is part of why we're having so much trouble. We need a little bit more clay. You got a lot of water, you need more clay. So what we're making are nice big globs of mud, and one of our challenges here is that we don't have big globs to start with, because we've already sifted the clay. When we want to do the finished plasters, we sift clay, we put it through this sifter that we have. But when we don't want to do that, when we're doing this, we can have big clods, we can have pieces of rock or whatever. And so Tim's getting all dirty here. And what we're going to do, we're making up some plasters so we can fill in, like you see right here, there's a hole. So we need to have all the holes filled in. And if we had a really nice big hole, let's make a big hole. Let's separate the bales just slightly if we can, maybe the other way. So let's say we've already sewn the wall together, and now we see, whoa, we've got a big hole there. Now we try to avoid that, but we might not be able to. So we want to fill in that space, and we don't want to have to make any more mud. We call it rhino poo than we have to. So we'd like to use something to fill in the space. So I walked over to the garbage, and there's lots of beer bottles over there, and this is a kombucha bottle. So we would take a small glob, because it's like paste. and we stick that in the hole, like that. And we need some up here. So there's a bit, and then we're going to stick this in, and then we're going to cover it over, because who cares that there's a bottle in there? You don't even know what's in your walls. So this way we're able to fill in the hole in the space where we're going to start to create the plaster. So.
Also, that bottle, it serves as insulation.
That's true, because when you trap air, you've got insulation. So if you just fill the rest, just put the rest of that in there. And then now, the next kind of plaster that we're going to make is what we call slurry. And the reason that we make a slurry is we're going to cover the outside of all the bales with this slurry. And that's when we'd like to have volunteer. We do have a towel and some water to wash your hands off with if you want to help us. But what we want to do is we want to make this slurry, which is just going to take a minute, and then we're going to spread that slurry all over the front of the bales. And the reason we want to do that is it gives us a way to attach the finish coat, which is the next bit. So let me get, what we want now, let's not put the string in there. Let's have this, okay. Tim's being the artist, the creative person he is. Again, normally we wouldn't use the sifted clay because it's a lot of work to make the clay sifted. We just dig on our land and there would be the clay, and that's how we would do this. Yeah, so he's just explaining. And we have a beer bottle, any kind of bottles. You could use plastic bottles. You're just filling in space. Oh, thousands. We have thousands of beer bottles and wine bottles. One time I found a huge barrel of Jim Beam bottles, and we used that to frame up in the shower room. We made a shelf because they stick out really far, and it's all covered in tile, and you could never guess that that's what it really is. All right, so now let's take the bucket. Isn't there an empty bucket? Yes. Oh, Chris got it under control. All right, we got an empty bucket. So now we need to have a bit of water in this bucket. Now this is how we make slurry, and we call this milkshake. Because what do you think a chocolate milkshake looks like? Well, that's what this is going to look like. So what we want to do, since Tim's got his hands wet, we need to have that container, the white container. We only want we want that little white mayonnaise container thing. And then what you're going to do is, I'll put it in, and Tim, you stir with your hands. You guys want to come up closer to see what we're doing? You're welcome to do it. Do I have a volunteer that's willing to help plaster? I know there's 2 people back there that have done lots of plaster with us. They've come to visit today. But if you're interested, it's a really great thing. It's a lovely activity. It makes you feel good. We need lots more. Do you want me to keep putting it in? All right. We gotta keep stirring. Oh, wait. That's sand. That's the problem. Let's have the dirt. Sam won't get it. It's a big problem. Okay. Well, you just gotta keep stirring with your hand till it looks like a kind of not a very thick milkshake. Yeah, there we go. Bill's definitely got a feel for this. Oh, he does. Okay, he's got a cousin who does this. All right, so we want it to be kind of like a milkshake consistency. Is it getting there, Tim? All right, because when we take our hands and we push that up onto the straw, we want it to get around in here, because the next layer is going to be thicker and we need it to stick to the bale. Otherwise it might fall off. I don't think it will, but this is what we do. What do you think? It's pretty thick, so let's stay with the pretty thick, because that's easy to work with. Now, Bill, we have that little white container. So I'm going to show you what to do, and I need, let's see, who could be my trusting? Chris, would you be my trusting assistant? And hold this for me. All right, and then I'm going to come back and talk like that. How's that? All right, so are you guys going to volunteer to help? You can wash your hands off, and we have a towel. All right, and I just have one question. Maddie, this is Maddie. Give Maddie a hand for being so darn brave. Like this, because one set, I'm going to show the technique. So you put this underneath, so when it does fall, you can grab it. So what you're going to do is just keep pushing that into the bale. So you want to try? Okay. I think he's going to do it. I think he's got the look that
You know, there's two theories of thought of laying your bales. Like these bales are laid by the width. You can actually stand them up, but the advantage with laying the bales this way is that you get a good surface. You can be able to adhere the clay onto the earth surface. It's insulation. Yeah, the insulation factor on straw bale is like R50. And as far as sound, they're incredibly quiet buildings because you have so much insulation.
A side note real quick, I actually saw a program where somebody took a traditional structure, installed straw bales on the outside for insulation purposes. It came out quite nice.
Okay, let me say something else. I just got to ask about how did we get the clay to be so nice and sort of sand-like? And that is, we have a sifter, and we made it with 2x4s, and then we take metal lath, which is that really heavy kind of, it looks like chicken wire, only it's much smaller openings, and it's very heavy duty, and they use it in concrete work. And that's our sifter, and then we put the clay on top, and we have a stone or a block of wood or something that shoves it through, and that's how we get it sifted.
You know, you can actually use tools like this, but it seems like every time I've done a wood shop rock station, you always use your hands.
Can I use tools to do this?
Oh, that is fine.
Can you use tools for the outside when you're making the finished plaster and things like that? But really, it's great to use your hands. Anybody else want to try for old time's sake? All right, I knew she couldn't stand it. She was born in plaster. Here she comes. Go. Yeah. All right, we call all of what we're doing plastering, and that's because it's really a kind of a material that's going over another material. That's plastering. But every single layer that we use is the same ingredients, different recipe, like making a different kind of cake. You start out with eggs and milk, you're still making a cake, but you might add other stuff. So we have straw, sand, and clay for almost all of the layers. So the next layer, after we do this, wait, we have to hear the name of this person. Hi, my name is Ann. Okay, she's one of our students. We haven't seen her for a while, but she came back, so we must not be doing too bad. And she survived us. Anyway, what we do next is we take clay that has been sifted, and we mix it with some sand and some straw, and we call that the slip coat, and that goes over top of this, and we stop seeing the straw then, because we've got it covered over. Then we sift sand and clay, because the sand, we don't want to have any big pieces, even the tiniest rocks, and we mix that with cut up straw, and it makes the finish. So it's a nice, smooth, really beautiful finish. Yes, well, you've also got to build the wall, like what we were starting to do to show you when we filled in the hole. It's not going to be smooth just because we want it to be. We have to be looking at that line and saying, is it even? And always trying to fill in the spots that are either denting in or denting out. How do we fix those? So there is an art to it. It's not just a simple little, oh, just throw it on there. You can paint it. You can also use a number of different natural finishes. You can cook flour and water and make a wheat paste that dries clear, like Elmer's glue, called Elise. You can cover it over with other kinds of sealants, like that you might use on wood. Or you can paint it. We've been experimenting with goat milk paint lately, and we've made some really beautiful goat milk paint, and you can paint the wall with that as well. So you kind of get the idea of how it works. And one of the things that you can't know unless you go to a building that's made with straw bales or tires or any of these kind of materials we're talking about is that it feels very different than a traditional house. It feels very welcoming and cozy because it's a quiet building because it has all this insulation. And generally the clay, using the clay as plaster, makes the building feel very earthy and really good to be in. If you look at pictures, as Tim was talking about, that this technique is not new. It's been used since the Egyptians created the pyramids. You'll see that it's always the same materials, the same stuff going on, but you can't always tell what's underneath of it. So when you look at pictures of the buildings in Kansas that are 200 years old, you can't really tell it's a Strawbell building.
Who was the guy that always lived by the building?
They can be many stories. Doesn't matter, especially if you're not doing load bearing. You're not asking the bales to bear the weight of the load. So you build a little skeleton, and it can be as many stories as you need it to be, because you're sewing it all together.
Did voiceovers.
What time are we supposed to end? I just don't want to leave one over.
One stole my cat and hid it, so
I know.
thought I was taking care of it.
It's 1:43.
He moved out
Are we done?
years ago. But anyway.
Anybody else have any questions? Because I don't want to go over and take the next workshop's time. Wait 1 second.
I have a little house across from the rainforest back on the little hill. We built it with like things that construction places were thrown away. And I was wondering, would this work in the tropics where we have hurricanes?
Okay. One of the things that you would have to consider with straw bales is the moisture. And it's got to have a really good roof, which we call the hat, and it's got to have a really great way to protect from anything getting at that straw bale. Now, you can seal the outside with lime plaster, which is a good sealant, and that will protect it. I would be more concerned about flooding, and that's one of our concerns. Well, you can't always tell. Sometimes strange things happen, like with hurricanes and stuff. But that's why we use the tires as the foundation, because that gets that straw bale up above, where not only there can be water around it, but the splat pattern from the wind. When the wind is driving the snow or the rain, you want to be able to get that straw bale up above that. So if you've got an overhang of the building coming like that, and you've got the tires underneath holding the straw bale up above where the splat pattern would be, you do fine. They do Adobe in India and all kinds of places, Thailand.
I built that loft.
Anyway, well, I'm going to end and I'll give this to Tim. He has something he wants to say.
Is Trish here? There she is. Great. Trish, come on up. I have a great recommendation for you. It's at the public library. It's on a video. It's called Garbage Warrior. It's Mike Reynolds. And actually, Mike Reynolds did all kinds of screwy things in New Mexico while making earth ships. Hi, Trish. And what Mike demonstrated is a lot of things happened to him. He lost his architecture's license from making earth ships made out of pounded tires. Well, what's really interesting is that he actually went into the Caribbean, or not the Caribbean, somewhere where there was...
What I say to my crew.
He went to Malaysia where the tsunami was hit.
I don't know why.
And he actually showed people how to make cisterns in order to collect water if they got hit with another bad hurricane. And from that, the architectural field gave him back his license for the work that he had done. And he made them round also, so that when the wind blew, is that it wasn't hitting a hard corner, it was actually blowing around the building. And all of it was done with pounded tires and bottles, plastic bottles, big time. So Trish Den Bosco's here from...
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming to the workshop. We've been a little bit disorganized, but then that's what human beings can be. And thank you to the volunteers that helped. And also, just to say, if you're interested, Blue Rock Station does have a website, bluerockstation.com. We have some booklets that we sell for $5 a piece that are tell you how exactly to do the things we did today, guaranteed not to break the string of the needle. And also some photos if you want to see more photos. But thank you for coming today and for your interest, and we hope to see you at Blue Rock Station sometime. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Annie and Tim. A wealth of information.
bus for Columbus, you got to get in touch with